Welcome to Skinner and Chalmers' Sleigh Bell Stories, a sleigh ride of festive tales and unexpected twists. Today's story for the fourth Advent, A Cloud's Journey Home for Christmas.
Dear listeners, Christmas in Memfield, there's nothing quite like it, is there? Snow blanketing the ground like a fluffy white quilt, houses glowing with lights that make the whole town look like a postcard, and of course, the distant sound of Master Chief trying to staple lights to his roof without falling off. Pure magic. And soon the time will come in just a few days where we say Merry Christmas. And hopefully you will all be richly blessed, be it a new games console, a graphics card, drinks, food, or simply time together with friends and family. Now, let me tell you a story that happened some years ago at Chalmers, and I had settled into our usual Christmas Eve routine. Yes, that's what we call it. A tradition of sipping cacao by the window, watching the snow fall, and arguing about who ate the last marshmallow. Spoiler alert, it was always me. You know, Seymour, Chalmers said, peering out at the frosted lawn. This might just be the quietest Christmas we've ever had. No fires, no mysterious explosions, no runway pet alligators. It's, well, peaceful. Give it time, I replied. Memfield isn't exactly known for its tranquility. And as if on cue, the sky darkened. The soft, powdery snowfall turned into a swirling frenzy, and the wind began to howl like an alligator denied his weekly tuna casserole. Of course, how could we forget? I said as we looked out of the window. The weather forecast said we were in for another storm today. We exchanged a glance, and just as I was about to suggest battening down the hatches, something caught our eye. A playful little puff of white darting through the sky like a child at recess. Cumulus, Chalmers' beloved pet cloud, was having the time of his life, twisting, tumbling, and twirling through the snowflakes as if he were leading his own winter ballad. He's certainly enjoying himself, I said, taking a sip of cocoa. Makes me almost wish I had a pet cloud too. Almost. Chalmers chuckled. He's quite the free spirit, isn't he? I just hope he doesn't get too carried away. This storm's shaping up to be a nasty one. The wind howled louder, and Cumulus seemed to falter for a moment, his usually graceful movements turning jerky and uneven. Chalmers leaned forward, his brow furrowing with concern. "Cumulus!" he called, his voice rising above the growing roar of the storm. "Come back inside as a cloud of steam. It's too dangerous out there." But Cumulus, either too carefree or too stubborn to listen, pushed further into the tempest. The wind whipped around him, tugging at his wispy form until, with a final gust, he was carried away, vanishing into the swirling chaos. "No!" Chalmers shouted, standing so quickly he nearly spilled his cocoa. He pressed his hands against the glass, his face pale with worry. "He's gone. Seymour, he's gone. That's the first time. I don't know how to handle that." Now, if there's one thing I can't stand, it's seeing Chalmers like that. He looked lost. And as much as I enjoyed teasing him, there are limits. Hey, I said, putting a hand on his shoulder. "We'll get him back. He's not gone, just temporarily misplaced. Like my recipe for cassolette." Chalmers gave me a withering look. "This isn't the time for your culinary tragedies, Seymour." "Fair enough," I said. "But the point stands. We're not going to let a little storm keep us from bringing Cumulus home." That seemed to snap him out of his despair. He straightened, determination replacing the worry in his eyes. "You're right. We can't just sit here." "But where do we even begin?" "Simple," I said, pulling on my coat. "We call in the cavalry." And by cavalry, of course, I meant our menagerie of peculiar pets. In Memfield, even the animals are a little unconventional. First, there was Krakatoa, our pet volcano. Don't ask how we came by him. It's a long story involving a science fair and a very confused geologist. Krakatoa was already glowing faintly, eager to help. "There's our beacon," I said. "He'll light the way." Next came Cosmo, my trusty orb pet. Floating serenely, he pulsed with energy, ready to navigate through the storm. "And let's not forget the troublemakers," I said as Mr. Jellybeans and Gizmo, our pet alligators, waddled into the room. They looked far too excited for what was about to be a serious rescue mission. "If they sniff out trouble instead of Cumulus, I won't be surprised," Chalmers muttered. Davinci, our ever-optimistic parrot, flapped down from his perch, squawking, "Let's do this," in perfect imitation of Chalmers' voice. "Still uncanny how he does that," I said. The geckos, Mr. Gay Gecko and Mrs. Trans Gecko, chirped eagerly as they climbed onto Cogsworth, our loyal golem. To be precise, Cogsworth is the golem foreman and a member of the Golem Union, which almost got us a few strikes from the golems if they get overtime. Cogsworth nodded solemnly, already prepared to dig through any snowdrifts in our path. Last but not least, old Bartholomew, our pet skeleton, shuffled into the room, his bony fingers clacking together. He had a special bond with Cumulus, something about being kindred spirits, even if one of them was technically water vapor. "Well, that's the team," I said, looking around at our motley crew. "Let's bring Cumulus home." Chalmers smiled faintly, the first glimmer of hope I'd seen since the storm began. "Thank you, Simmer. Don't thank me yet," I said. "We've got a blizzard to face, and if I know Memfield, it's not going to make this easy." With that, we stepped out into the swirling snow, our ragtag band of pets at our heels. The wind bit at our faces, and the storm roared in our ears, but we pressed on, determined to find Cumulus and bring him back where he belonged. After all, Christmas isn't about sitting by the fire sipping cocoa. It's about the lengths we go to for the ones we care about. And we weren't going to let a little snow stand in our way. Little did we know, the adventure that awaited us would test our wits, our courage, and yes, even our patience with two mischievous alligators. But we'd face it all together, because that's what family does. And with Christmas just around the corner, there was no better time to remind ourselves of that. Stepping into the storm was like walking into a snow globe that had been shaken by a hyperactive toddler. A snow whirled in every direction, and the twinkling Christmas lights on distant houses flickered faintly through the haze. It was beautiful, sure, but also utterly chaotic, like Memfield itself. Chalmers, ever the pragmatist, was glued to his smartphone, monitoring live weather patterns. "The storm's moving northeast," he said, squinting at the screen. "Cumulus is likely heading in that direction. If we follow the trajectory, or..." I interrupted, pointing at Krakatoa, who was already glowing like a molten lighthouse. "We could just follow our flaming volcano and see what we find." Krakatoa grumbled approvingly, his glow intensifying as he trudged ahead, melting a path through the snow. "Ah, yes," Chalmers muttered, still glued to his phone. "Who needs advanced meteorology when you have literal lava?" As we marched forward, Cosmo floated beside Krato. Our orb pet was pulsing softly with a steady rhythm. Every so often, the light would intensify and Cosmo would shift direction slightly, guiding us like a mystical compass. In general, our orb pet is very fascinating and just as mysterious. We've had Cosmo for a very long time, but we still hardly know anything about orbs as a species, what their anatomy is like and so on. But never mind. "Looks like Cosmo's got a beat on Cumulus energy," I said. "Let's hope he's as accurate as he is floaty." Behind us, Mr. Jellybeans and Gizmo were zigzagging through the snow like overexcited toddlers on sugar highs. Their snouts were buried in the drifts, sniffing furiously. "They've definitely caught a scent," Chalmers said. "Or they're looking for snacks," I replied. Just then, Jellybeans let out a triumphant growl and leaped into a nearby hedge, followed closely by Gizmo. The hedge exploded in a flurry of snow and branch, and out scurried a hedgehog. "Sonic!" Chalmers exclaimed, unable to hide his amusement. "Not Sonic," I corrected. "Just an ordinary hedgehog, probably traumatized now, thanks to these two." Jellybeans and Gizmo looked thoroughly pleased with themselves, even as Chalmers dragged them back to the group. "Focus, you two," he said sternly. "We're on a rescue mission, not a hedgehog hunt. Why do you always have to want to destroy Sonic's hedge, you Philistines?" Meanwhile, the geckos, perched atop Cogsworth's broad stone shoulders, were hard at work. Mr. Gay Gecko scampered up the trunk of a nearby pine, his green skin blending with the branches, while Mrs. Trans Gecko chirped excitedly, scanning the horizon from her perch. "You know," I said, watching them, "if geckos ever form a search and rescue team, they're going to be unstoppable." Davinci, ever the morale booster, launched into a spirited rendition of "Deck the Halls," his voice surprisingly melodious for a bird who mostly squawked insults the rest of the year. "Deck the halls with clouds of cumulus," he sang. "Fa-fa-la-la-la. La 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 la. Catchy, I said. Not exactly traditional, but catchy. After about an hour of trudging through snowdrifts, following Krakatoa's glow in Cosmos' pulsating light, we found ourselves at the edge of a dense, snow-laden forest. The towering trees loomed like silent sentinels, their branches heavy with frost. This has to be the place, Chalmers said, glancing at his phone. The wind patterns, the energy signatures, everything points here. Or, I said, pointing at a faint glimmer on the ground, we could just follow that. It was a trail of tiny raindrops, gleaming like liquid diamonds against the snow. Cosmo floated closer, his orb glowing brighter as he hovered over the droplets. Is that? Chalmers began, but before he could finish, old Bartholomew shuffled forward. The skeletal pet knelt in the snow, his bony fingers brushing the droplets. Cumulus tears, he said solemnly. He's scared, but still moving. And Chalmers' face softened, and he crouched beside Bartholomew, an imposter, his resting gently on the skeleton's shoulder. We'll find him, he said, quietly. We'll bring our Cumulus home. Looks like the trail leads deeper into the forest, I said. Cosmo, Krakatoa, you're up. Let's light the way. With a renewed sense of purpose, we pressed on, the pets rallying around us. The storm might have been fierce, but so were we. After all, this wasn't just about finding a lost cloud. It was about bringing a piece of our family back where he belonged. Little did we know, the forest held more than just clues. It held challenges we weren't yet prepared for, and a mystery far greater than we could have imagined. The forest of frosted pines. It looked like something out of a postcard, or one of those holiday commercials where everyone's drinking hot cocoa and wearing impossibly cozy sweaters. Towering trees shimmered with ice, their branches heavy with snow. The storm still howled above, but here, beneath the canopy, it felt quieter, almost too quiet. Well, I said, brushing snow off my coat, if Cumulus had to pick a place being dragged to, at least he has taste. Cosmo floated ahead of us, his orb glowing brighter with every step. It pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat, guiding us through the maze of snow-laden trees. You know, Chalmers said, glancing between Cosmo and his weather app, this is remarkable. Cosmo's path matches the storm's trajectory almost perfectly. It's like he's reading it. You're just realizing this now, I said. Cosmo's got a sixth sense for this kind of thing. He's basically our GPS with personality. Chalmers nodded thoughtfully. I never gave him enough credit. He's incredible. Don't let him hear you say that, I joked. He already has an inflated ego for an orb. Ahead of us, Krakatoa led the way, his molten glow lighting up the forest floor. The snow melted around his feet, leaving steaming puddles in his wake. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the forest, followed by a deep rumble. I looked up just in time to see a massive branch breaking under the weight of snow, hurtling straight toward us. Look out! I shouted, instinctively grabbing Chalmers' arm. Before the branch could crush us, Cogsworth surged forward, his stone arms reaching up with impossible speed. He caught the branch effortlessly, holding it above his head like it weighed nothing at all. Another day, another rescue, masters, Cogsworth said in his deep, gravelly voice. Saving lives is in the job description, right after employer relations. Consider your contract renewed, I said, grinning. With the immediate danger averted, we pressed on. The geckos scurried ahead, climbing the trees with practiced ease. Mr. Gecko chirped loudly, signaling that they'd found something. We hurried to their location, where a small clearing opened up before us. The raindrop trail we'd been following stopped abruptly, glinting faintly in the snow. This is it, Chalmers said, scanning the area. The trail ends here. Krakatoa stepped forward, his heat melting a patch of snow. Beneath the frost, faint traces of Cumulus energy shimmered like an aurora. Dahlbull flapped onto a nearby branch, singing triumphantly. We're getting closer! We're getting warmer. Let's find our cloud before the storm gets complex. Old Bartholomew knelt by the melted patch, his bony fingers brushing the faint glow. I can feel him, he said softly. He's scared, but he's holding on. Chalmers crouched beside him. Do you think he's still moving? Bartholomew nodded. Cumulus always moves. He can't help it, but he's tired. He needs us, Chalmers. Bartholomew paused, a faint smile playing on his skeletal face. You know, this reminds me of the summer. Cumulus and I spent hours floating over Memfield Lake. He tried to copy the shapes of the other clouds. Ducks, castles, dragons, but he always got them a little wrong. It didn't matter. He was happy, and so was I. The memory seemed to fuel Bartholomew's determination. We have to find him, he said firmly. And when we do, I'll teach him how to ride out storms. He's part of a bigger family. After all, the clouds above, the wind, they're all connected. He just needs to learn how to be part of it. Chalmers placed a hand on Bartholomew's shoulder. We'll find him, he said. Together. Just then, the air grew colder, and a low, ominous hum filled the clearing. Shadows flickered between the trees, coalescing into a towering figure of swirling snow and ice. What in the name of all things merry and bright is that? I asked, taking a step back. Glistening with frost, the figure loomed over us. Its hollow eyes fixed on the faint glow of Cumulus energy. It was a storm spirit, its form shifting and swirling with the fury of the blizzard. It's drawn to Cumulus, Chalmers said, his voice tight. We have to protect him. Krakatoa let out a deep, rumbling growl, his fiery glow intensifying. Dabois flapped his wings, shouting, Stand your ground! We've got this! I hope you're right, I muttered, because something tells me this spirit isn't here to wish us a Merry Christmas. As the storm spirit advanced, the pets rallied around us, their unique abilities ready to face whatever came next. This wasn't just a rescue anymore, it was a battle for one of our own. And if Memfield had taught us anything, it was that we'd face it together, no matter the odds. The storm spirit reared back, its swirling form towering over us like a malevolent snow tornado. Its hollow, glowing eyes fixed on Cumulus' faint energy trail, and I could feel the sheer force source of its icy power pressing against my chest. All right, Chalmers, I said, trying to inject some levity into the situation. We've got a towering snow monster, a team of misfit pets and zero backup. Feels like a great time to channel our inner Pokemon trainers, doesn't it? Chalmers gave me a look, part exasperation, part agreement. If you're Ash Ketchum, then I'm Professor Oak, he muttered, pulling his coat tighter against the wind. Deal, I said, turning to Krakatoa. Krakatoa, use Ember. The pet volcano let out a low, rumbling growl, the glow from his molten core intensifying. He unleashed a burst of heat and flame, sending a wave of steam spiraling toward the storm spirit. The ice shards the spirit hurled at us melted midair, sizzling as they vanished into the snow. Super effective, I called, grinning. Chalmers, your turn. Chalmers nodded, pointing to Cosmo. Cosmo, use Protect. The orb pulsed with light, forming a shimmering barrier around the team. The storm spirit lashed out with a howling gale, but the wind broke harmlessly against Cosmo's glowing shield. Not bad for a Professor Oak impersonation, I quipped. Dabois, perched on a branch, flapped his wings furiously and began belting out a defiant rendition of Jingle Bells. Dashing through the snow, in a one-horse open sleigh. You can't beat us now, so just go away. That's the spirit, Dabois, I said. Keep the morale high. But the storm spirit wasn't going down without a fight. It let out an earth-splitting wail, sending a blast of icy wind that cracked Cosmo's barrier. Snow and ice whirled around us, and the geckos clung tightly to Cogsworth, chirping nervously. We need more firepower, Chalmers shouted. You got it, I said, pointing at Krakatoa again. Krako, turn up the heat! Krakatoa roared, his molten core blazing even brighter. Streams of lava, like heat, rippled toward the spirit, weakening its icy form. The storm around us began to calm, though the spirit's core still pulsed ominously. That's when old Bartholomew stepped forward, his skeletal frame steady despite the wind. He reached out, his bony hand trembling slightly as he faced the spirit. You've taken my friend, he said, his voice low but firm. Release him. The spirit seemed to hesitate, its form flickering like a candle in the wind. For a moment, I thought it might actually listen, but then it let out another roar, doubling down on its assault. Well, it was worth a shot, I said. Chalmers, I think it's time for some teamwork. Chalmers nodded. Cosmo, keep the shield up. Krakatoa, keep the heat coming. Dabois, keep singing, I guess. Dashing through the snow, Dabois sang, his voice somehow louder than the howling wind. We'll win this fight today. With Cosmo's barrier holding steady and Krakatoa's heat weakening the spirit further, I turned to Bartholomew. You're up. If Cumulus is inside the thing, now's your chance to bring him back. Bartholomew nodded, stepping closer to the flickering spirit. He reached out again, his skeletal hand glowing faintly as he touched its icy surface. For a moment, everything went still. The spirit froze, literally, its swirling form solidifying as Bartholomew's glow intensified. Then, with a soft crack, its icy shell shattered, and a small, faint figure emerged from within. Cumulus! Chalmers cried, rushing forward as the tiny cloud floated weakly toward him. The storm spirit let out one final wail before dissolving into harmless snowflakes, which drifted gently to the ground. The storm around us began to calm, the howling winds replaced by a peaceful hush. We did it, I said, watching as Chalmers cradled Cumulus like a parent reunited with their child. We actually did it. Bartholomew knelt beside Cumulus, his bony fingers brushing the little cloud's soft edges. You're safe now, he said softly, and when we get home, I'll teach you how to stand strong against any storm. Davinci swooped down, perching on my shoulder. See? Told you he'd win. Never doubted it for a second, I said. Well, maybe for a second, or 10, but in the end, we succeeded like Lumas of succeeding. The pets gathered around, their exhaustion evident but their spirits high. Even the geckos chirped triumphantly from Cogsworth's shoulders. This, Chalmers said, holding Cumulus close, is what Christmas is all about. Family, teamwork, and maybe a little bit of magic. Don't forget the Pokemon-style battle strategies, I added. That was key. As we began our journey back home, the snowflakes falling softly around us, I couldn't help but feel a warmth that had nothing to do with Krakatoa's glow. We'd faced the storm together, and we'd come out stronger for it. And with Cumulus back where he belonged, Christmas in Memfield would be just as it should. A little chaotic, a little magical, and full of heart. As the storm finally began to settle completely, the forest transformed before our eyes. The winds died down. The swirling snowflakes drifted lazily to the ground, and above us, the sky cleared to reveal a full moon. Its silvery light blanketed everything, casting the pines and snow-covered hills in an otherworldly glow. Well, I said, surveying the scene, if I didn't just have the fight of my life with an actual storm spirit, I'd say this is almost peaceful. Ahead of us, Cumulus floated weakly beside Chalmers, his edges still wobbly from the ordeal. To show his gratitude, he began forming tiny snow hearts in the air, each one drifting gently down like a token of thanks. Chalmers smiled, reaching out to steady the little cloud. Easy. Cumulus, he said softly. You've been through enough. Rest, you're safe now. He's trying to be polite, I added. But really, Cumulus, the best way to thank us is to stay out of a storm next time, at least as long as you don't know how to control the winds yet. But you got this? Someday. Davinci, ever the mood booster, flapped his wings and started a spirited rendition of Jingle Bell Rock, snowing and blowing up bushels of fun. He squawked, now the rescue mission's done. Your lyrics could use some work, I said, but it was hard not to grin. The Cogsworth trudged steadily beside us, carrying the geckos on his broad stone shoulders. Both Miss Gay Gecko and Mrs. Trans Gecko were fast asleep, their tiny legs dangling over the edges. It's a good thing Cogsworth's made of rock, I said. Otherwise, I'd say he's a softie. Family first, Cogsworth rumbled in his deep voice. And besides, they don't weigh much. I've carried heavier loads, like Mr. Jelly Beans when he accidentally ate a fruitcake. Don't remind me, I said. I'm still finding crumbs in the couch from that disaster. As we walked, the trees began to thin, and in the distance, Memfield came into view. The town was aglow, its streets lined with twinkling Christmas lights and its houses warm with golden hues. Through frosted windows, we could see families gathered around Christmas trees, exchanging smiles and laughter. You know, I said, gesturing toward the town, that's what it's all about, isn't it? The lights, the warmth, the togetherness. Chalmers nodded, his gaze fixed on the glowing scene ahead. It's why we do what we do, Seamer, for the ones we care about. And here I thought we did it for the marshmallows, I said, smirking, reaching out for Chalmers' hand. Beside me, Cosmo pulsed with a happy glow, spinning in slow circles like he was doing his own little victory dance. Then he floated over to me and began gesturing wildly, his orb tilting this way and that. What's that, Cosmo? I asked, pretending not to understand. You want to jump into the deep fryer when we get home. Cosmo pulsed brighter and letting out a small robotic noise, his version of an enthusiastic nod. Of course you do, I said laughing, because nothing says celebration like being fried to a crisp. But don't worry, folks. Cosmo's an orb pet. He's round as balls, basically indestructible, and can handle temperatures up to, 4,000 degrees Celsius? Chalmers raised an eyebrow. You've done the math on that. I've done the experiments. I corrected, being sarcastic. The thought of Cosmo gleefully dunking himself into the fryer was so absurd it made me laugh out loud. And somehow that laughter felt like the perfect punctuation to the evening's adventure. As we passed the last stretch of forest, the glow of Memfield grew brighter, welcoming us home. The pets seemed to pick up on the mood. Jellybeans and Gizmo wagged their tails. Dalbo sang a triumphant, "We are the champions," and even Cumulus seemed to float a little higher. "We're almost there," I said. "Just a little further, and then it's Cocoa, Christmas carols, and deep-fried Cosmo." In that order. Chalmers chuckled, shaking his head. "Only in Memfield, Seymour. Only in Memfield." As we approached the first glowing houses of the town, I couldn't help but feel a warmth in my chest. A warmth that had nothing to do with Crocato's heat or the mug of cocoa waiting for me at home. It was the warmth of knowing we'd done something good. Together as a team, as a family. And that, I thought, was what Christmas was all about. Finally, after what felt like a journey straight out of an overly ambitious holiday special, we stepped into the warm embrace of home. Our living room, with its crackling fireplace and slightly crooked Christmas tree, felt like the coziest place in the world. The pets poured in behind us, each one radiating their unique energy. Dalbois immediately flapped to his perch and started humming "Oh Christmas Tree." "Well, Mr. There's?" The Jellybeans and Gizmo made a beeline for the fireplace rug, clearly ready to nap off their snow-filled escapades. "Not on the lights, Jellybeans," I warned as he tried to nibble on a string of twinkling bulbs dangling from the tree. "We already had one blown fuse this week, and I'm not calling Master Chief to fix it again." Cumulus floated gently by the fireplace, his glow finally restored. His edges were smoother, his energy calmer, but he still had that playful twinkle in his vapor. "Well, you're the star of the night, aren't you?" I said, reaching for a roll of tinsel. "Let's make it official." With a bit of flair, I draped the tinsel over Cumulus, giving him a festive sparkle. "Behold," I declared, "the official Christmas cloud of Memfield." Chalmers chuckled, raising an eyebrow. "You're aware he's not a decoration, right?" "Oh, I'm fully aware," I replied. "But look at him, he loves it." Sure enough, Cumulus puffed up slightly, his glow brightening as if to say, "Wes, I do love it." Then, as if remembering something vitally important, he floated over to the window next to the fire and began condensing into little droplets on the glass. "Ah, here we go," Chalmers said, crossing his arms. "What is it this time, Cumulus?" Cumulus made a tiny splashing sound as if to say, "You know the drill." "He wants to vaporize himself again, doesn't he?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Always," Chalmers replied, shaking his head. "I swear, this cloud has more fun turning into water and back than most kids do with a trampoline." With a sigh and a smile, Chalmers grabbed a small pot, filled it with the droplets, and set it over the fire. Soon enough, the steam rose in delicate curls, and before long, Cumulus reassembled himself in the room's center, puffier than ever. "There you go," Chalmers said. "Knock yourself out, but don't get carried away again, or we're chaining you to the tree." Cumulus floated in happy little loops, as if doing a victory dance. "See," I said, raising a mug of cocoa, "this is what the holiday spirit looks like. Even a cloud gets it." Chalmers grabbed his eggnog and raised it high. "To teamwork," he said, "to our crazy pets, and to Christmas miracles because, frankly, I'm still not sure how we survived that storm." "Here, here," I said, clinking my mug against his while I take him in my arms with one hand. As the room filled with the warmth of the fire and the sound of Dalbois' spirited caroling, I couldn't help but marvel at the chaos we'd pulled off. Cogsworth stood by the tree, carefully adjusting an ornament with his stone hands, while the geckos snuggled into a cozy corner of the couch. And, naturally, Jellybeans was back to chewing on the lights. "Really?" I said, glaring at him. "We just talked about this." Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. A loud, cheerful series of raps that made Dabois pause mid-verse. Now who could that be? Chalmers asked, setting down his mug. It's either Christmas carolers or Garfield returning the hedge clippers he borrowed last spring, I said, heading to the door. When I opened it, I was greeted by a sight that perfectly encapsulated the spirit of Memfield. There stood Sonic, Shadow, Echo, Yugi, Van Goat, even the Sea Ape and some members of the Memmed Hams AI community, all bundled up and carrying various dishes of food and drink. What's this? I asked. We heard about your little adventure, Sonic said, smirking. Figured you'd want some company to celebrate. And pie, Echo added, holding up a dish. Because what's Christmas without pie? Behind them, Van Goat nodded sagely, their goat, like beard dusted with snow. The light in your window called us, they said. It felt welcoming. It's a lava volcano, I said, gesturing at Krakatoa. But hey, whatever works. As the group filed in, the living room filled with even more warmth and laughter. Plates of food were passed around, stories were shared, and even Cumulus floated among the guests, adding his own playful touch to the festivities. This, I said, raising my mug again, is what makes Memfield home. Chaos, camaraderie, and way too much pie. Chalmers nodded, a rare smile softening his usual stern expression. And I wouldn't have it any other way, he said. As the night went on and the sounds of laughter and caroling filled the air, I couldn't help but feel grateful. For the friends who'd gathered, for the pets who'd proven their worth, and for the little cloud that reminded us all what Christmas was really about. As the laughter and festivities wound down, the warmth of the fire seemed to pull everyone into a comfortable silence. Chalmers and I finally found ourselves back in our usual spots by the fireplace, mugs in hand, the faint hum of conversation lingering in the background. You know, Chalmers said, swirling his eggnog thoughtfully, it's funny how it all came together. A misfit crew of pets, a storm spirit, and a wayward cloud, and somehow we pulled it off. As a team, as a couple. Funny, I said, raising an eyebrow. I'd call it a Christmas miracle. I mean, have you met Miss Jellybeans? The fact that he didn't eat our entire supply of tinsel is a miracle in itself. Chalmers chuckled, shaking his head. It does make you think, though, about how important it is to have people and pets who've got your back, no matter how strange or chaotic things get. I nodded, letting his words settle. Memfield wouldn't be Memfield without a little chaos. But you're right. It's the people and the moments like these that make it feel like home. Let's not make chasing Cumulus a yearly tradition, though, Chalmers added, smirking. Agreed, I said. Next year, we'll stick to gingerbread disasters and burnt Yule logs. Much safer. Outside, the completely cleared storm left Memfield blanketed in a pristine layer of snow. The glow of the town's Christmas lights shimmered in the distance, their reflections dancing on the frozen ground. And there, high in the sky, Cumulus hovered proudly. With deliberate care, he formed himself into the shape of a perfect star, his edges glowing softly against the night. Look at that, I said, pointing to the window. Or Christmas cloud, leaving his mark on the world. Chalmers followed my gaze, a rare, genuine smile spreading across his face. A star to remind us of everything we've been through tonight, and to remind us that even the smallest things can shine the brightest. The star-shaped shadow from the moonlight that Cumulus cast on the town below seemed to embrace Memfield in its glow, a quiet symbol of the adventure that had brought us all a little closer together. Turning back to the fire, I let out a contented sigh. You know, Chalmers, this is what I look forward to every year. Not the chaos, not the running around, but these moments. The quiet ones where everything feels just right. Chalmers nodded, lifting his mug one last time. To Christmas, he said. And to all the wonderfully strange things that make it special. I'll drink to that, I said, clinking my cocoa against his eggnog. We took a sip from the cups, looked into each other's eyes, and before I could form a smile, Chalmers suddenly came very close and gave me a kiss. Unusual for him, as I'm usually faster, but I sensed that Chalmers was particularly happy that evening, even if he likes to hide it from the outside world. We both knew in that moment, as long as we had our family, each other, and our friends, we could achieve anything. And now, listeners, I know I've taken you on quite the journey tonight, through storms and spirits, laughter and chaos, but I hope you've enjoyed the ride as much as I have. Christmas is a time for family, for friends, and yes, even for mischievous pets who chew on holiday decorations. It's a time to come together, to share stories, and to remind ourselves of what truly matters. So from all of us here in Memfield, Chalmers, myself, and our entire menagerie of pets, we want to wish you a Christmas filled with warmth, laughter, and a little bit of magic. Stay cozy, stay safe, and we'll see you next time for more adventures. But for now, Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night later.